They spit in his food. The hastily scrawled note, discreetly placed beside his plate, froze billionaire CEO Arthur Vance. The fork, halfway to his mouth with a piece of steak, stopped inches away. He sat alone at a dingy table near the restrooms, dressed in a worn hoodie and tattered sneakers, an outfit no one would recognize as belonging to the owner of this establishment. For a man who had survived boardroom betrayals and market crashes, this particular insult felt entirely different. It wasn't just a disgusting act. It was living proof of the discrimination rumors he had come to secretly investigate. This was no longer just business. This was personal, and it was about to ignite a confrontation, not just to reclaim dignity, but to expose a rotten secret festering deep within his own empire. A simmering rage began to build, and Arthur's mind replayed the moment he first walked through the doors of the Gilded Spoon just an hour earlier. The mistreatment had started from that very second. "Do you have a reservation, sir?" the hostess asked, her tone dismissive. "No," Arthur replied, maintaining his usual calm. She exhaled slowly, an expression of annoyance, as if it were part of her job description. "We're fully booked tonight, sir. But I suppose we could squeeze you in at the bar or near the kitchen entrance. Would that be acceptable?" Arthur nodded. "Sure, that'll be fine." He followed her through the grand dining room, past tables filled with white patrons in suits and designer dresses. Not a single black face, except among the staff. That part hadn't changed since the 1800s. She led him to a table by the service door where the smell of bleach wafted out whenever it opened. No candle, no smile, just a menu unceremoniously dropped like a warning. And now, as the flashback ended, Arthur returned to the bitter reality. He was still sitting at that same miserable table. The menu lay untouched, but the crumpled note with its ominous message was clutched tightly in his hand. The initial mistreatment wasn't accidental. It was policy, and the act of spitting in his food was its abhorrent culmination. The sharp eyes of the CEO began to dissect the corrupted system he owned. He observed the manager, Derek, circulating among a lavish table. "Mr. Davenport, I trust your steak is to your liking," Derek fawned. "Our Chateau Margaux is an exquisite pairing. Wouldn't you agree?" As Derek passed Arthur's table, his smile vanished. He merely glanced at him and swept past as if Arthur were part of the furniture. Just then, he heard Derek's sharp voice ring out from across the room. "Jasmine, table 7's water glass is low. Can't you see that? Or do I need to point it out for you?" A black waitress, the only one among them, turned with calm composure. "Yes, Mr. Derek. I'll get right to it." Arthur's gaze followed her, and he was certain this was the person who had sent him the warning. A moment later, as she approached his table to clear the plate, he decided to test her. "Sir, would you care for anything else?" she asked, her voice even and professional. "No, thank you," Arthur replied, his voice low and steady. "Jordan, table 12 needs more wine. Stop dawdling." Derek's voice boomed from the bar, momentarily drawing the attention of nearby staff. That was the moment Jasmine needed. Her hand moved with almost invisible precision. In one fluid motion, she picked up Arthur's used napkin and replaced it with a fresh, neatly folded one in its place. To an outsider, it was just standard service. But Arthur, whose full attention was on her, sensed a subtle difference. The new napkin felt slightly stiffer, a fraction heavier. Before turning away, Jasmine's eyes met his once more. It was a fleeting glance, but it held everything. A confirmation, a warning, and an unspoken plea. Then she melted into the flow of servers, disappearing into the restaurant's bustle. Arthur maintained a placid expression, He was in no hurry. He slowly finished his water, nodded to another server for the check. Only after paying and rising to leave did he accidentally drop the napkin to the floor. He bent to retrieve it, and in that brief moment, shielded from other eyes, he subtly unfolded it. Inside, 3 lines hastily scrawled in ballpoint pen. Basement. Midnight. Back warehouse door. Arthur's heart tightened. This was no longer about poor service or racism. A secret midnight meeting in the restaurant's basement? This implied a conspiracy, an illicit operation. He realized that the discrimination he had come to investigate was merely the tip of an iceberg, a symptom of a far more corrupt and dangerous illness eating away at the very core of his establishment. He carefully refolded the napkin, tucking it deep into his pocket. Tonight, his investigation would take an entirely different turn. The Charleston night descended, carrying the lingering heat of a southern summer day. Arthur waited in his rented car, parked on a secluded side street, observing his restaurant from a distance. The elegant lights within gradually dimmed. Staff members departed one by one, leaving behind only darkness and silence. At precisely 11:50 p.m., he exited the car, his hoodie pulled high, obscuring most of his face. The alley behind the restaurant reeked of garbage and old grease. The back warehouse door, just as Jasmine had indicated, wasn't locked but merely ajar, a small gap wide enough for a person to slip through. Arthur held his breath, gently pushed the door, and slid inside. The darkness was absolute, the air thick with the smell of dampness and cheap liquor. He moved with the practiced stealth of someone who had navigated many dangerous situations, each step silent. A faint sliver of light emanated from beneath the door of a room deeper within the basement. Along with it, hushed voices, too indistinct to make out, but clear enough to know people were there. Arthur cautiously approached, finding a hiding spot behind some old wine barrels and peering through the crack in the door. The scene inside stunned him. This was no meeting of disgruntled employees or racist schemers. Under the yellow glow of a single overhead bulb, Manager Derek stood with 3 other men in expensive suits. On the rough wooden table between them were not personnel files, but thick stacks of cash, ledgers, and an open laptop. This week's revenue is unusually high, Derek. One of the men with a large gold ring spoke, his voice heavy with authority. Those party invoices you generated look a little creative. Derek smirked, a smile Arthur had never seen in the dining room. Don't worry, Councilman. All the numbers align with the customer flow. The tax authorities will never suspect the gilded spoon. This place is a perfect machine. Just make sure the money from your shell companies keeps flowing steadily. Arthur's ears buzzed. Councilmen? Shell companies? It all clicked into place. Racism wasn't the main objective. It was merely a tool, a smokescreen. By creating a toxic environment, a disguised whites-only club, Derek and his cronies had limited curious customers, eliminating eyes that might raise suspicion. The contempt Arthur endured wasn't just the bigotry of a racist. It was a calculated defense mechanism of a criminal organization. His restaurant, a symbol of elegance, had been transformed into a sophisticated money-laundering hub for the city's most powerful figures. Arthur retreated into the darkness, his heart pounding with anger and the sheer danger of the situation. He quietly pulled out his phone, started a voice recording, and brought it close to the door crack. He had the audio. Now he needed the numbers. And to do that, he needed someone on the inside, someone he knew he could trust. He didn't return to his car immediately. Instead, he waited, hidden in the shadows of the alley, until nearly 2 a.m. when he saw Jasmine's familiar figure emerge from the back door. She looked tired, her shoulders slumped after a long, stressful shift. "Miss Brooks?" Arthur's voice, low and soft, echoed from the darkness. Jasmine startled, instantly adopting a defensive posture, her hand clutching her keys. "Who's there?" Arthur stepped out of the shadows, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "It's me, the customer at the table near the service area. I just wanted to say thank you." Jasmine narrowed her eyes at him, her guard still up. "Thank you for what?" "For the warning," he said directly, "and for the napkin. I was in the basement. I saw the meeting." The tension on Jasmine's face seemed to freeze. She glanced around, ensuring they were alone. "You shouldn't have been there. It's very dangerous." "I know," Arthur nodded, "and it's far worse than I imagined. This isn't just about discrimination. This is a criminal organization." He looked her squarely in the eyes. "I need your help. I need someone on the inside." Jasmine was silent for a long moment, assessing the man before her. "Why should I trust you? Who are you?" This was it. Arthur took a deep breath. "My name is Arthur Vance, and the Gilded Spoon Restaurant. It's mine." He expected a reaction of shock, disbelief, or perhaps fear. But instead, Jasmine merely gave a slight nod, a barely perceptible smile flickering across her lips. "I know," she said softly. This time, it was Arthur's turn to be surprised. You knew?" "I was a law student," she explained. "I have a habit of looking things up. When rumors spread about a new secret owner buying this restaurant chain, I looked. I recognized you from the cover of an old business magazine I read in the library. When you walked in tonight looking like that, I was 90% sure." Admiration was clear on Arthur's face. This woman wasn't just brave. She was incredibly intelligent and discerning. His trust in her was solidified. "Then you know I'm not kidding," he continued, his voice more urgent. "Derek and his cronies are laundering money right under our noses. He has connections to powerful people in this city. I managed to record part of the conversation, but I need financial proof. Ledgers, computer data. Things that can only be obtained from Derek's office." He took another step closer. "Jasmine, I can't do this alone. You're the only person here who saw the truth and dared to do something about it. You're the only one I can trust. Help me expose them." Jasmine looked down at her calloused hands, then back up at Arthur, her eyes now burning with a fierce determination. She had given up her dream of justice once to save her family. But now, justice was seeking her out, right in this humiliating workplace. "Mr. Derek and his kind," she said, her voice no longer weary but resolute. "They stole my dignity every day. They thought I was nothing." She looked directly into Arthur's eyes. "I'll help you. I'll take back what they owe." In that dark, grimy alley, a secret alliance was forged. A billionaire CEO and a brave waitress, both underestimated and both ready to risk everything to bring the truth to light. The cheap motel room Arthur had rented under a false name became their clandestine command center. It was a far cry from the opulent offices he was accustomed to, but here, amidst peeling paint and worn furniture, a bold plan was taking shape. The only light in the room came from the screens of two laptops side by side on the table. Over the next few days, they operated like a perfectly oiled machine. By day, Jasmine remained a diligent waitress, their eyes and ears on the inside. By night, she met Arthur to piece together the puzzle. Arthur, with the mind of a tech and finance prodigy, began his assault on the system's outer perimeter. Derek isn't stupid, Arthur muttered, his eyes glued to a diagram of the restaurant's network. He set up a pretty good firewall, and this accounting software is a custom build. He's built a digital fortress. He used his top-level access as the owner to bypass some initial security layers, but the most crucial data remained encrypted and hidden. He could see the money coming in, but not how it was being cleaned. That's where Jasmine came in. She knew nothing about encryption or network architecture, but with a lawyer's mind, she knew how to spot anomalies in a seemingly perfect system. Arthur showed her the weekly revenue statements. Look, Jasmine, revenue from Thursday to Saturday always spikes. That's normal for a high-end restaurant. But Jasmine shook her head, pointing to another item. Not normal, Arthur. Look at the inventory costs. Why are the costs for high-end wine and seafood skyrocketing on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, our slowest nights? And why are we only ordering from these 3 suppliers at prices 20% higher than market? Arthur narrowed his eyes. He immediately ran a quick analysis of those 3 supplier companies. The results flashed on screen moments later. All were shell companies registered under untraceable names. My God, Arthur breathed. They're using fake supply invoices to pump dirty money into the system. That's just one part, Jasmine continued, the fatigue on her face replaced by intense focus. There's also this event hosting expense entry. I work there every night. Last week, the books show we hosted a corporate dinner for 50 people on Monday night. But Arthur, last Monday night, the entire restaurant had exactly 12 guests. A critical oversight, a loophole only an insider could spot. Arthur looked at her with awe. Her real-world knowledge was a key no hacker could ever replicate. They're creating phantom events, he concluded. They're reporting revenue from parties that never happened, legitimizing dirty cash as business profit. They had cracked the methodology. Now, the picture of the criminal network was clear. But to bring it down, they needed the original proof, the real ledgers, the transaction emails, the undeniable records. It's all on Derek's computer, Jasmine said firmly, in his office. That's where he runs everything. Arthur nodded, his gaze hardening. Then we have no other choice. He turned to Jasmine. We have to break in. Sunday night was perfect. The restaurant closed early, and the back alley was almost deserted. At precisely 1 a.m., Arthur and Jasmine met at their rendezvous point, both dressed head to toe in black. The air was eerily still, broken only by the hum of industrial refrigerators and the wind whistling through the narrow passages. The manager's master key can open the back door, but it'll trigger a silent alarm, Jasmine whispered, her voice barely a breath in the night. But there's a broken window latch in the dry storage room. Derek always assumed no one was skinny enough to fit through. She pointed to a small, high, dust-caked window. That was their entry point. With Arthur's help, Jasmine, being more slender, squeezed through with difficulty but successfully. The click of the latch inside opened softly. They were in. Inside the restaurant, darkness reigned. The smell of bleach was stronger at night, and the empty tables looked like ghosts. Jasmine led the way, moving like a phantom in her own workplace, each step familiar and soundless. Security camera at the end of the hall. Just before the office door, she signaled. That's when Arthur acted. He pulled a small device from his pocket, resembling a portable charger, handheld Wi-Fi jammer. It'll create a small interference zone, taking the camera offline for about 10 minutes. More than enough time. He pressed a button. A small green LED blinked. Go. Derek's office was secured with a simple lock. Jasmine, with months of meticulous observation, knew the exact type of lock. Using a small kit Arthur provided, she skillfully worked in silence. A dry click echoed in the silent hallway, and the door swung open. Inside, Derek's office was messy and reeked of stale coffee. The only light came from the desktop computer's idle screen. Password? Arthur whispered. I saw him type it many times, Jasmine replied. He always shielded his hands, but I noticed his pattern, and there's a sticky note taped under the desk. She bent down and in a second found it. It was just a name and a number. Caroline 1995. His daughter's name and birth year. Arrogant. They were inside the system. Arthur quickly plugged a high-speed encrypted USB drive into the computer. This isn't a regular drive. It'll copy the entire user directory, including deleted files and browser history, and then erase its own traces. The green progress bar slowly began to creep across the screen. Each percentage felt like an eternity. The silence in the office grew heavy, every external sound making them jump. Suddenly, headlights from a car swept across the office window, followed by the sound of an engine slowing. Car! Jasmine whispered, her heart pounding. She peeked through the blinds. A police patrol car was stopping on the other side of the street. Both stood motionless, holding their breath. The progress bar was at 82%. Arthur placed his hand on the USB drive, ready to pull it out and abort everything. But the officer just sat in the car for a few seconds, perhaps checking something on their phone, then drove away. They exhaled in relief. 98%, 99%, 100%. Complete, Arthur announced. He pulled out the USB drive, quickly cleared the login history, and closed all windows. They returned the sticky note to its exact position, locked the office door, and restored the signal to the security camera. As they slipped out of the dry storage window and stood safely in the alley, the small USB drive in Arthur's hand felt heavy. It didn't just contain data. It contained truth, justice, and enough evidence to bring down an entire criminal empire built on corruption and discrimination. They had succeeded. Against all odds, they had obtained the weapon they needed. Arthur wasted no time. The very next morning, he didn't make an anonymous call or send a cryptic email. Instead, he wielded the influence of a billionaire. He flew to Washington, D.C. on his private jet and arranged a direct meeting with an FBI deputy director with whom he had a long-standing trusted relationship. In a secure, windowless conference room, Arthur didn't just hand them the USB drive. He presented everything systematically. On a large screen, he projected his detailed financial analysis, pointing out every suspicious transaction, every fraudulent invoice, every shell company. He meticulously explained the money laundering scheme through phantom events and fictitious suppliers. The USB drive containing the raw data merely served to corroborate his sharp analysis. And most importantly, he provided a signed statement from Jasmine, which he had helped draft to legal standards. The statement detailed everything she had witnessed, from the systemic racist attitudes to the veiled remarks about Derek's special transactions. She was the living witness, the insider's eyes, who transformed lifeless numbers on a spreadsheet into an undeniable criminal narrative. The FBI assembled a special task force. With Arthur's irrefutable evidence, they quickly secured warrants for surveillance and monitoring. Over the next 2 weeks, they secretly gathered more intelligence, identifying all members of the network, from low-level money launderers to high-ranking officials taking bribes. And then the night of reckoning arrived. It was a bustling Friday evening at the Gilded Spoon. The clinking of wine glasses and the lively chatter of Charleston's elite filled the air. Derek was in his element, moving between tables, shaking hands with the city councilmen and other powerful businessmen, his co-conspirators. Jasmine was still working, tray in hand, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew what was coming. At precisely 9 p.m., as the party reached its crescendo, the main doors suddenly burst open. FBI, nobody move. A team of fully armed agents swarmed in. The music stopped, the laughter died. The entire restaurant fell into a deadly silence, broken only by the clatter of a dropped fork. Derek's smug smile froze on his face. He looked around, disoriented. Then his gaze landed on Jasmine. Two agents walked straight to the councilman's table. "Sir, you are under arrest for corruption and money laundering. Do you people know who I am?" The politician stammered, his face pale. "We know very well," an agent replied, coldly cuffing him. Derek tried to flee towards the back door but was cut off. As the cold handcuffs clicked shut on his wrists, he stared at Jasmine with an expression of utter disbelief. Amidst the chaos, a female agent with a stern yet kind face walked directly to Jasmine. "Miss Brooks? I'm Agent Miller. We're here to protect you. You're safe now." That was the moment everyone in the restaurant, all those who had once looked down on her, saw. The invisible black waitress they never paid attention to was at the heart of this upheaval. Derek, as he was led away, couldn't take his eyes off her. In his gaze, the everyday contempt had transformed into profound shock. He finally understood. He had been defeated by the very person he never considered to exist. A week later, the Gilded Spoon was silent. A large sign on its door reading, "Temporarily closed for renovation." The sensational arrests had become nationwide news. Inside, the space was no longer filled with artificial bustle, only the quiet anticipation of a place awaiting rebirth. Arthur and Jasmine stood in the empty dining room, the morning sun streaming through the large windows, casting dusty beams on the vacant tables. The air was no longer heavy with expensive perfume and arrogance, but fresh and full of promise. "I fired the entire management team and all implicated staff," Arthur began, his voice echoing in the still space. "This place needs a completely fresh start, a new leader." He turned to Jasmine, his eyes filled with respect. "I don't need a manager who just knows how to pour wine or arrange tables, Jasmine. I need someone whose moral compass never wavers. Someone who understands the value of integrity better than anyone. That's why I want you to be the new CEO of this establishment." Jasmine was stunned. She looked around the dining room where just last week she had bowed her head under Derek's scolding. "Mr. Vance." "Arthur, I am deeply honored, but I'm just a waitress. I don't have management experience." "Your experience is more valuable than any business degree," Arthur asserted. "You saw through a criminal network no one else did. You planned with me, faced risk without flinching. You don't just have courage. You have intellect and a heart that always seeks justice. That's all I need." He paused, then continued in a warmer tone. "And I know this isn't your ultimate dream." He looked directly into her eyes. "Your dream of becoming a civil rights lawyer, it doesn't have to end. I want to make a second offer. I will fully fund your tuition to return and complete your law degree at Howard." Tears welled up in Jasmine's eyes, but these were tears of happiness and relief. Everything she had sacrificed, All the dreams she thought she had buried were now being handed back to her. Arthur smiled. You don't have to choose. Do both. Run this restaurant, arrange your work schedule flexibly so you can attend classes. Turn this place into a living example of the justice you'll fight for in the courtroom later. Jasmine took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the opportunity and responsibility she had just been given. She looked into Arthur's eyes, no longer with the hesitation of an employee, but with the steadfastness of a partner, a leader. I accept, she said, her voice clear and resolute. Both offers. She took a step forward, her gaze sweeping across the room. But this place will no longer be the Gilded Spoon. We'll rename it. It will be rebuilt from the ground up. This place won't just serve exquisite food. It will serve justice. Every employee will be treated with respect. Every guest, regardless of their background, will be welcomed equally. It won't just be a restaurant, she concluded. It will become a symbol that courage and integrity can transform even the darkest place into a beacon of hope. Arthur extended his hand. I very much look forward to that, CEO. Jasmine took his hand, a firm handshake. In the empty dining room, under the morning sun, a new chapter had truly begun.